For decades, the logic of innovation followed a predictable arc. Inventing a successful product or a new business model often secured a comfortable 10 to 20-year window of high profit margins. To manage this stability, companies built rigid 5-year strategic plans. These documents governed budgets and long-term hiring, while defensive efforts focused entirely on a small circle of direct rivals within the same industry. Digital infrastructure and artificial intelligence have since compressed these market cycles. When technology lowers the barrier to entry, the time it takes for a new idea to be replicated or improved upon drops. This chart shows how the lifespan of a competitive advantage has shifted. That historical 20-year window of dominance has shrunk to a cycle of just 1 to 3 years. Attempting to execute a fixed 5-year strategy while operating inside a 1-year innovation cycle leaves an organization out of sync with its own market. The plan becomes a static document in a world that has already moved on. When these established companies lose their footing, it is often because they were monitoring the wrong threats. They focused on rivals who shared their business model while ignoring shifts happening at the edges of their industry. The most significant threat to a modern business rarely looks like a traditional competitor. It comes from an invisible direction, a company from an unrelated sector that leverages its existing scale to solve the same customer problem. Survival now requires businesses to re-examine their assumptions about what competition actually is and where its boundaries begin. This is the reality of cross-industry disruption. Companies use their existing data and technology to enter and capture market share in sectors that were once considered entirely separate. For a traditional commercial bank, the primary threat is no longer the bank across the street or the lender in the next city. Instead, the threat comes from platforms like Grab or Shopee. Because these apps facilitate daily transactions and rides, they already have the data and the user relationship to issue loans and process payments directly, bypassing traditional banks. Traditional Swiss watchmakers faced a similar shift. For centuries, their only rivals were other artisan craftsmen who specialized in the manual mechanics of timekeeping. But when Apple introduced a digital wearable, they weren't just making a watch, they were creating a piece of mobile health technology. Within years, Apple Watch sales surpassed the entire Swiss watch industry combined. Measuring market share within a single industry is now a dangerous metric. The real battlefield is the customer's share of wallet and time. If a company from any industry can capture a customer's attention, they can capture their spending. How does an organization plan for a competitor that hasn't even entered the market yet, or a timeline that changes every month? It starts by moving away from single-point predictions. Success no longer comes from hitting a specific, predetermined revenue target, regardless of what happens in the wider economy. This visualization represents a dynamic and adaptive strategy. When a rigid path meets an obstacle, it stops. A fluid strategy, however, is designed to branch and flow around new market realities. This model requires mapping out multiple scenarios at once. Management prepares a playbook for rapid growth and a separate playbook for market contraction, allowing them to shift resources the moment the data changes. It also relies on continuous experimentation. Instead of waiting for a perfect annual plan, companies launch small, agile projects to test new markets. They gather data in weeks, not months, and use those lessons to adjust their course. In this framework, the high-level vision is the only thing that remains fixed. The daily operational methods are as flexible as clay, reshaped by whatever the market demands next. 4 diagnostic metrics reveal whether an organization is structurally built for this pace or merely surviving on past momentum. The first is speed. If a new project requires 5 layers of management signatures for approval, the organization is far too slow to counter a tech-driven competitor that can pivot its entire model in a single afternoon. The second is skill. If the workforce relies on technical skills from a decade ago, they cannot effectively utilize the AI and data tools required to compete in a compressed market cycle. The third is dependency. Relying on a single legacy product for 80% of revenue is a high-risk position. As that core market reaches its limit, a company must have a new growth engine, an S-curve, already in development. Finally, there is the radar. Leaders must look past their own balance sheets and scan for technological and social shifts originating in entirely different industries. An organization that fails these checks is too rigid to withstand a cross-industry invasion. Charles Darwin observed that survival is not guaranteed by strength or intelligence, but by a species' responsiveness to change. Strategy has evolved from a fixed operational map into the continuous engineering of an organism that adapts as fast as its environment. Next time, we will look at the mechanics of integration, how to connect this adaptive strategy directly into a sustainable business model.